All right, so the point of doing these videos is to not only give a review of the game about what we liked and what we hated, but also to explain why we decided to stop creating the content for said game. And the first game that we're doing is High on Life, because we will not be releasing episode... What episode are we on?
I think we're on, what, 5?
5 or 6.
We're not doing 5, 6, or anything after that. I mean, I guess the easiest way to start one of these is what we liked about the game. So I'm gonna let Jared go first. What was something that you thought it did well?
I don't know. I thought the jokes at first were like super funny.
The jokes at first being funny, I think, is something you're gonna get a lot of. The jokes were funny. Like when you first load into the game, they were funny. Ethan, did it make you laugh?
Oh, I'd say like the first hour or so of gameplay was really funny. The issue you kind of ran into was the classic issue I kind of have with all of JustJarred and Reeeee and stuff, which is just it's the same like 5 jokes just repeated on loop for like an hour.
I feel like that is definitely true, but I feel like they tried to like say the joke but in a different manner, and I think they could have done either a better job of doing that or coming up with other jokes.
Okay, so I guess we just throw pros and cons out the window because it's really hard to talk about the pros without talking about the illicit downside of it. The jokes were funny, but I think the best way to say it is the game was almost all joke, right?
Oh,
absolutely.
Like, I got the vibe that, haha, it's funny, but the mechanics for the game, the story to the game, everything else kind of backseated the jokes, which is, it's fun. Don't get me wrong. Like, I get why people enjoy it, but you're gonna run into this thing where, like, all right, now that I've heard the insanely vulgar, off-the-wall joke 30 times, what else am I doing with my life for 20 hours of gameplay? The combat itself wasn't awful, but it definitely wasn't like something that was, it wasn't like I was hooked on it, you know what I mean?
I feel like it was like generic Call of Duty in all honesty.
Yeah, no, I could see that, like Call of Duty, but with alien guns instead.
Yeah, yeah, I guess you could put it that way.
Ethan, have you seen more content of the game than what we played?
Yeah, so I think a thing that I realized pretty early on was you get really tired of the jokes really quickly, and the issue is they don't introduce all of the other guns and mechanics until I'd say probably about 2 to 3 hours into the gameplay, because I mean, we didn't hit, the second gun until 4 hours in or something like that?
Yeah, it was
3 to 4 hours in.
Yeah.
So you get sick of the personalities really quickly, almost.
I think that's also kind of like made worse by the fact that the guns do not shut up ever. Like, it's just constant.
Well, in their defense, and you're going to get a lot of hate for that sentence, there is a setting to turn down the gun banter, but it's what we were talking about, is if that's 90% of what makes the game fun for people, then by turning that down,
what's even the point of
eliminating
playing? Yeah.
Right. There's nothing left. It's just a shell of a game. How did you feel about the overall graphic quality? The only thing that took me by surprise was the very first, like, you're coming out of the computer graphic shift.
Fighting
it had
the
like
wife's husband.
The what?
The divorce
Yes.
lawyers, girl, whatever.
Yeah.
Those dudes.
Buck Thunder.
And I know, I get what Buck Thunder was. What I'm saying is, once you zoomed out of the screen, it actually hurt my eyes.
Oh, yeah,
like for my
like
eyes to try and adjust. Now the graphics, I guess it doesn't really matter because you don't see a lot of humans, but the detail of the human characters looked like it was going for realistic, but it definitely wasn't. Does that make sense?
I'd have to look at what they used to make the game, but it looks very generic and very cookie cutter. Like, it seems as though they took the same 4 or 5 body outlines and kind of just copied and pasted them for the majority of characters in the game, as well as like a lot of the assets.
What studio made it? Wasn't it Justin Roiland's studio that made the game?
Squanch Games or something like
Games?
that? Yeah,
I
it's
think
his
that's right.
personal
That sounds
thing. I
right.
think the only thing they ever made was like Trover Saves the Universe or something like that. So not like inexperienced studio.
Even an inexperienced studio, you think they would have added, Trover Saves the Universe was their other game. And to be honest with you, that one looks even worse. Yeah, This looks like Rick and Morty turned into a game, but worse. I haven't played it. If anyone gets shitty at me, I mean, it just doesn't look good. Oh no, they have a couple games. Accounting Plus, Dr. Splurchy Presents Space Heroes.
That sounds fun.
Accounting Plus?
No, the Splurge Heroes.
Dr. Splurchy Presents Space Heroes. Yeah, I mean, I guess the comedy is funny. But then once you get past the shock, because that's what the joke is,
it's
right?
A lot
it's
of
almost
shock
all
factor
shock
joke.
comedy.
Yeah.
So once you get past the shock comedy of it, where you're like expecting the world to be warped and twisted, I feel like it's just empty. It lost its luster on you. As far as editing goes, I mean, I know that we talked about a couple of different pitfalls that we ran into along the way. I know that gunshots were insanely loud, which we tried to adjust for, but it wasn't even just that. I mean, you can, if you're playing the game and you're not recording it, you can definitely hear voice lines clipping.
Oh yeah, I'd say the audio in the game is one of the most like glaring issues I kind of ran into. Every single fight scene is like 40% louder than the entire rest of the game for no reason, so balancing audio there is always a pain. The audio clipping you mentioned, I noticed a lot whenever Gene was talking, like every other sentence he said would clip. There was quite a few other instances where I'm like, wow, okay, there's no reason for this to be here. It's a lot of small stuff that kind of added up to just be a pain to edit.
Well, it adds up. Mainly, I think it's because of the hype that the game attracted, because so many people were seeing finely tuned cuts and edits that were obviously compensating for these problems and just outright avoiding them. Like, I don't know how many clips I've seen that are just showing like how hard the audio clip is.
Oh yeah.
So they were either explicitly cutting those out of their videos or doing insane back-end editing to avoid them. But the game, like the raw game file itself, has issues that you're sitting here going, you know, if you would have played an hour's worth of your own game, you would have heard this. Like, if you produced the game and you were putting the audio file in, you would have heard this. So why wouldn't they extend the extra effort to go back and fix it if it's a product that they're selling to people? Like, let alone making content out of it and being like, ooh, that hurts my ears. I don't know if I want people to hear that. But if you're going to sell the game to someone, wouldn't you do... I mean, most people are doing so much work to try and make the perfect game that if they had something that was that easy of a fix as saying, oh, this recording is, you know, fucked, let's re-record it or edit around it, and they just didn't.
How much did the game end up costing? Was it like a $60 game?
It's free on Game Pass, which is where I played it.
Let me check Steam real quick. I'm very curious because I feel like it was a $60 game for some reason.
That's insane.
Yeah, no, it is actually just a $60 game.
That's a $60 game.
That's wild.
Okay,
$60
so
game
that makes
for
it worse.
Roughly what, like 8 hours of gameplay with very obvious issues with basic stuff like audio clipping. That's wild.
I mean, yeah, that just shows a blatant disregard for the people that are buying your content at that point. If you're that lackluster and you're charging $60 for the game, now, I didn't have this opinion coming into this, but now it just kind of feels like a money grab, damn near.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of what every game kind of boils down into, is they're just wanting to get money, but $60? I could not, like... I'm not sure who is willing to spend $60 for that game. Since it is free on Game Pass, I'm sure a lot of people ended up just using that, but wow.
I feel like that's where a lot of people played it, I'm gonna be real honest.
I mean, outside of people who are like making content on it and stuff like that, I could not see a reason why you would spend $60 to essentially play a game that is built around the idea of, hey, the entire game is a joke. That's the game.
It almost felt like a Rick and Morty skit. Like, it was a bit, almost.
Yeah.
Not a game. It was a bit, which is funny until the person giving the bit won't stop.
Oh, yeah.
Then you're like, all right, I don't want to hear this anymore. I'm sick of this. And then I guess it's worth mentioning, you know, if we're going to bridge into why we're not going to make content out of it, we have to admit our own faults, which is like episode 1 and 2 just were not done well. Like, and that comes from communication between me to you, not really knowing what we're shooting for content wise. So we can't blame that on the game itself. And there's no point in really, like, I'm okay if viewer counts are going to drop as we go down the road on a series, because someone might click on the game and be like, yeah, I don't like this game. It's not that I dislike the channel, but I don't like this game, which is fine. But I was running into this really bad feeling where I was like, okay, if someone a year from now stumbles upon episode 3 and episode 3 is really good, like I liked episode 3, someone stumbles upon it, they're gonna go digging, like they're gonna go, oh, it's a series, let me start at episode 1. And I don't think anyone's slogging through the 25 minutes that was episode 1.
Oh yeah, I think that definitely leads to a large part of why we're kind of stopping, is there's not really reason to have like 13 episodes of like good content whenever you've got the first 30 to hour of content that's just badly edited and nobody would want to watch. Like I look at episodes 1 and 2 and I'm like, nah, I could not sit down and watch all of that.
I couldn't watch them either. I mean, you're not the only one.
I mean, I think part of that we can blame on the game a little, and I'm going to blame it on the game a little. Because like going through raw footage, I'll give people a little backseat into what I kind of was dealing with. So episodes 1 and 2 are essentially the first hour to hour and a half of gameplay. In the first roughly like 45 minutes of the game, there is a singular combat scene and the rest is all dialogue. The first 45 minutes of the game, there's one combat in 45 minutes of dialogue. It's wild to me.
And is that the combat of the...
I think that's like literally just the intro where you fight onto the ship and grab the teleporter or whatever it was.
And there really wasn't a lot explaining like why they were there. Like I feel like that came later, which... I mean, I guess is a storytelling tool at some level, but at the same time, I'm like, can I get some backlog into what the fuck is going on right now?
It feels very reminiscent of that Rick and Morty vibe, which is what I get a lot in the game, which is like, all right, here's the joke. We're not going to explain why this is funny, but this is funny. Trust us.
That makes sense. And then the optimistic side of it too, which everyone that's in the Discord knows that we are like trying to get ready for Hogwarts Legacy. So it came into like, do we want to keep crunching on the timeline of trying to get this game out, not liking episode 1 and 2 and kind of feeling like we're running in place, or do we just want to take 2-3 weeks, make some review videos, get some artwork done, and get mentally prepped to make sure that Hogwarts Legacy is a big game for us? Because we also jumped on the bandwagon of High on Life super late.
Oh yeah, we were probably at least a week to 2 weeks late on that. I mean, even just looking at like Google Trends on how much it was searched up, it was almost dead 2 weeks after the game came out.
Yeah, we definitely jumped in at the late end, because, I mean, I'm going to look at the Google Trends page. We made our first video January, like the first week of January. It was at its lowest point, like it was at 100% search optimisticality, making up words, December 11th through the 17th, and then sharp drop off to, if that was the peak at 100, when we released the video, it was at 21% what it was. So we were definitely after the curve. So it took us trying to figure out what we were doing and making some bad recordings, mixed with playing a game on the downward spiral. Everyone had already seen the game and enjoyed the game, if not played the game themselves. So there's really no reason to be searching it anymore, compared with the joke getting old on us, which took about 3 weeks, like 2 gaming sessions where we were just like, man, this is like, you got to give us something else to latch onto, and it didn't. So we were just like, all right, well, we're not gonna finish this. Sound like we covered everything?
Sounds pretty much like we covered everything. I have relatively decent hopes for Hogwarts. I saw whatever their post was earlier this week, I think, that detailed kind of like some of the overarching things. There's like 120 hours or something like that of content in the game, like 150 different quest lines, stuff like that. So hopefully we'll get some really cool stuff getting out about that, and I feel like we've got a decent hold on the style of editing and stuff that we're wanting to go with.
There is so much content for Hogwarts Legacy, but we could sit here and do a breakout on what we're excited about. Well, we should really do that in a separate video. So that's our hot takes on High on Life, and if you stumble upon this playlist and wonder why there's nothing past episode 4, hopefully this gives you some insight as to what we were going through while editing, and we will see you guys the first week of February when Hogwarts Legacy comes out.